5 years ago today, two boys carried out what would become the nation's deadliest school shooting. Questions still remain as to why the Columbine massacre happened. One of the Columbine killers, though, was taking antidepressant medication, and some experts believe those drugs may have played a role. Senior medical reporter Galen Tethrow has more.
April 20th, 1999, a day Mark Taylor will never forget.
I think of it every single day.
And he's got the scars to prove it.
What all these are from?
This is a cut when they were opening me to see if they can find the bullets inside of me, to see if it had hit any major arteries in my body.
That was the day Taylor was hit by more than a dozen rounds fired by gunman Eric Harris at Columbine High School. Taylor just barely survived the rampage in which Harris and fellow student Dylan Klebold carried out the nation's deadliest school shooting, killing 12 students and a teacher before shooting themselves. 5 years later, questions remain as to why they did it. Mark Taylor's convinced it has to do with medications like this, antidepressants called SSRIs. That's short for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Eric Harris was on an SSRI. Autopsy reports show he had the antidepressant Luvox in his system at the time of the Columbine shooting. Harris had been taking the drug since early 1998, and just 3 months before the Columbine killings, his dose was doubled. Taylor thinks Luvox triggered Harris's attack on Columbine and is now on a crusade to ban the drug and others like it. SSRI antidepressants hit the headlines in March when the Food and Drug Administration issued a health advisory on 10 popular types. With more than 150 million prescriptions written in the U.S. alone yearly, the names are quite familiar: Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, and the list goes on. The FDA is now concerned about clinical trials where some patients taking the drugs demonstrated increased hostility and more suicidal thoughts.
I think these drugs are far too deadly to remain on the market.
Dr. Ann Tracy is the director of the International Coalition for Drug Awareness. She says the way SSRIs work makes them deadly. They regulate a chemical in the brain called serotonin, a neurotransmitter that plays a role in mood and behavior. Infamous crimes have been committed by people on SSRIs. Andrea Yates, convicted of killing her children in Texas, was on Effexor. 19-year-old Corey Badsgard had just increased his dose of SSRIs when he walked into his high school carrying a loaded rifle.
I was getting pretty low, like rock bottom. Suicide was a constant thought that I was having.
In early February, Food and Drug Administration advisors discussed concerns about the unknown effects of the drugs on children and the fear that some antidepressants may increase suicidal tendencies. Advisors told the FDA that the use of antidepressants by children and teenagers is skyrocketing, despite lack of evidence that they alleviate depression, and some evidence that they may even make it worse. FDA officials responded by asking manufacturers to place bolder warning labels on the drugs. Dr. Aradhana Sood is a leading researcher on the effects of SSRIs and other mood-altering medications on children. She's the chair of child and adolescent psychiatry at Virginia Commonwealth University and medical director for the Virginia Treatment Center for Children in Richmond, Virginia.
I feel that we have known for at least a decade that selective SSRIs do cause what is called a hypomanic disinhibition, meaning that in certain children, they will produce a heightened sense of impulsiveness.
But unlike Dr. Tracy, Dr. Sood says the problem is not the medication, but the physicians prescribing them.
It is a wide variety of people who are, and I don't want to be patronizing, but who are not trained adequately in child psychiatry, who are now prescribing antidepressants a great deal and do not realize the risk that carries. They might think that as the child is getting more irritable, that the depression is increasing. And what they do is they increase the medication, which makes it even worse.
The Food and Drug Administration estimates that in 2002, doctors wrote a record number of antidepressant prescriptions for children under 18, about 11 million. Nearly 3 million of those prescriptions were for children 11 and under. Overall, the FDA estimates that sales of antidepressant drugs in the United States increased from 14 million prescriptions in 1992 to 157 million in 2002.
I find more that doctors are actually encouraging and putting lots of pressure on parents to medicate their children.
The government has been reviewing the safety of antidepressants since last summer. The FDA's counterpart in Britain first sounded the alarm last year when it banned all SSRIs except Prozac for patients under 18. Taylor says he hopes the U.S. will eventually do the same, but until then, he'll be working toward that goal.
This is a mission that I can't stop. I want to stop it. I mean, I want to get on with my own life, but it's just too important.
Until the questions about SSRIs are settled, FDA officials say parents with kids who are taking the drugs need to watch for symptoms like agitation, anxiety, and hostility, signs that their children may be heading for trouble. Galen Tethrow, CBN News.